Hey, friend, are you feeling overwhelmed by emotions, especially in parenting, marriage, or work? Then listen up. I love helping women learn and implement powerful emotional management tools in a small group environment so they can handle everyday feelings with more calm, more clarity, and more confidence. It's called the Emotional Confidence Club. And right now, we're open to new members. If you're ready for more peace and less stress in your life, apply now for the Emotional Confidence Club at aliciamichelle.com/club. Hi, I'm Alicia Michelle, and as a trained and certified Christian mindset coach, I've helped hundreds of Christian women discover brain science-based mindset tools to help them grow closer to God and break free from anxiety, perfectionism, people-pleasing, and feeling like they're never enough. The Christian Mindset Coach is the award-winning podcast that shows you how to use simple brain science principles and biblical truth to renew your mind for lasting confidence, joy, and peace. I'm so glad you're here. Grab a cozy spot and let's get started. Hey there, welcome to today's episode of the Christian Mindset Coach with me, Alicia Michelle. You've probably heard the term empty nest, and that can be kind of a scary term or an exciting term, depending on how we're walking into that season. And I know we've talked about the empty nest previously on the podcast, but today we're going to break it down into a very specific aspect that we must encounter if we're entering the empty nest stage and we are seeing our kids leave the house, but also maybe making decisions that are different than what we raised them to make. Or we're having to deal with some uncomfortable realities that we're like, how do I show up as a mom here? What does that look like? I think it's really important to talk about some of those emotions because a lot of times we feel like, why did this happen? What do I do with this? Where do I go? Am I alone? It just feels very strange and foreign. And I love that there are women like today's guest, Kate Battistelli, who want to talk about this, who want to give encouragement, who want to let us know that we're all walking through this and it's going to be okay. And that this second half of life, the empty nest, has so much to look forward to. So let me tell you a little bit about Kate Battistelli. She's the best-selling author of The After Party of the Empty Nest, The God Dare, and Growing Great Kids. And she's a contributing writer to the Encouraged Bible for Women, the Spirit-Led Women's Bible. Her work has appeared in several popular Christian magazines and blogs. And she is the co-host of the Mom to Mom podcast. And interestingly, she once starred as Anna in the Broadway national tour of The King and I. So she has a background being on Broadway, and she's also the mom of popular Christian singer Francesca Battistelli. She's now based in Franklin, Tennessee, and she encourages women to step out of their comfort zones and into God's irresistible future. Here is the interview with Kate Battistelli. Hey, Kate, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me, Alicia. I am thrilled to be here.
Yay. Okay, so we're going to go right for it here. We talk about, you've written this great book on empty nest, but we can envision all these great things that happen in the empty nest. Like, wow, there's all this new freedom I have. There's like new things I can do maybe in my marriage or maybe in a career path I can explore. And then there's this other side that's challenging for a lot of us going through this where we're like, so who am I now?
Exactly.
How do I show up, especially as a mom? How do I detach myself for maybe some of these decisions that my kids are making that I don't know if I agree with?
Yeah.
So, what would you say is one of the biggest struggles that moms in this stage face in terms of parenting their kids?
Well, I think it's not easy to detach because you've been with them. That's been your job, forever and ever. It feels like forever and ever, really only 20 years or so. We have the whole rest of our lives.
Yeah.
But I think it's just hard because you can't make the decisions anymore. You're not the loudest voice in their head. We are raising them to go. And that's the hard part because they do go. And then you're just like, well, I used to have control. I could fix everything. We can't fix it anymore. They're going to make mistakes. And actually, sometimes that's good. Certain mistakes are good because you're going to learn from them. I mean, more than anything in my life, failure has taught me a lot, because it doesn't turn out the way you want. You have to figure out how and what to do to make it work. But just hanging on too tightly, forgetting that our role has shifted, but it's hard because nobody tells you, I mean, you can read about the emptiness, even my book and all that, but until you're in it and until you're facing that loneliness, because you have the freedom, there's so many good things that many women just forget. Because in the beginning, it's hard. You're sort of at sea. You just really don't know what to do, especially with your kids. Are you texting them all the time and calling them? Are you refusing to cut that umbilical cord the second time in their lives? Because I think our kids want to see us doing okay. If they say, "Oh, mom, she's just sitting home and she's watching Netflix and eating Cheerios," Cheetos, Cheerios. But, just not one. Either one would be good, but not thriving in this new time. And I mean, in the beginning, we're all going to mourn. We're all going to have that sadness when they go. But after a couple months, it's time to start moving out of that. Stop texting them. Stop still trying to be that main voice in their life because we have to let them go. Our moms let us go, hopefully, everybody that's listening. But the other thing is, you don't want them holding on too tightly either, because they can be the one that's calling every day. And what do I do about this? And how do I do that? And sometimes it's time to push them out of the nest.
Yeah.
Certain birds actually do that. They will push them out and they just have to learn to fly. So I guess it's a delicate balance, knowing where your child is, because some kids need more support. Others are ready to go. They're like, I'm out of here. That's hot.
Yeah.
But, that was quite a different era. Kids didn't do what I did, but I didn't meet the Lord till I was 29. So
Yeah.
that's my only excuse for pretty much breaking every rule you could break.
Yeah, we've all been there for
Oh,
sure.
gosh.
Yeah. You talk about this detachment happening. So what does that look like in a healthy way? You shared a few things there for sure, but what does that look like? Like, for example, if there's a decision that comes up with a child and they're doing something that you wouldn't raise them to do.
Yeah.
We think the ultimate question is how can we let go of that so that we're not holding responsibility for what
Yeah.
they're doing? Because that eats us alive.
It does. It does. And we can't. We're not responsible anymore. But I think we have to be as available as we can be. Sometimes they'll come to us for advice. Other times, if you've raised a prodigal, a child who has simply walked away, that's a whole other situation, because those kids, sometimes they've gone so far off the rails that you can't get to them, but you can through prayer. And I say in the book that Jesus leaves the 99 to find the one, and he is the one going after your kids. Pray, intercede. That's really the only thing we can do if we don't have communication anymore, or you just can't get through to them. But if you're still with them and talking to them, hopefully they're going to have the kind of relationship with you where they can get your opinion. Maybe just ask, what would you do? And they may do it, they may not. Hopefully you're going to have that kind of relationship where you can do that. We have that with our daughter. Now she's older. She's 40 with 7 kids. So she doesn't need our help very much. She's married. She's got her husband. But when they're younger, if they reach out, share as best you can, but try not to take the reins of that issue unless there's certain things that you would have to help out. But there are a lot of things where it could go this way or that way. You give your advice, always advise them to pray and figure it out, but that's really the best you can do.
Hey there, it's Alicia. Do you love the science and scripture-based tools that we talk about here on the show, but want some accountability and practical help applying these principles to your life? Well, then you're invited to apply for the Emotional Confidence Club. I like to think of the club as the lab where we implement the tools that we talk about here and in my book, Emotional Confidence. Imagine having the chance to interact with me live every week as you practice the 7 emotional management tools in our roadmap to help you manage emotions like fear, anxiety, guilt, shame, anger, and more. I love watching the lives of the women in the club transform in incredible ways, moving from overwhelmed and frustrated to calm and confident. You too can learn how to make these truths applicable to your situations and find emotional peace despite life's ongoing stress. Right now, we are welcoming in new members, but it is by application only. Does this sort of accountability, growth, and caring support as you apply these tools to your life, does that sound good to you? Then apply now for the Emotional Confidence Club at aliciamichelle.com/club. That's aliciamichelle.com/club. So what do we do with what's inside of us? Some of the emotional traps that come up. What was that like for you, maybe, to see some of those emotional traps, and how would you recommend we walk through them?
Yeah, it's hard. When my daughter left, because we were raising her, for her Nashville career and music and all that, I was so focused on that I didn't ever think about there's going to come a time where she's not here. She's our only child. So she was the focus. And then all of a sudden she's gone. And it really hit me like a ton of bricks. I just didn't know what to do with myself because my husband, who always worked at home, was now working out of the home for a few years. It was like, okay, now it's really empty. There's nobody here during the day. So it was hard, and it took me a while. I think all of us, for most of, though there are some moms that are been waiting for this. It's like, okay, everybody's gone. Now I can do the other thing I was created to do. But for a lot of us, that takes a little time.
Sure.
What I always advise moms is do what I did, start volunteering. I started at a single moms ministry. I knew we were really making a difference. I made great friends with the women who volunteered there. And I think that's one of the best things you could do is it gets you out of your house, get you out of yourself, out of this just sitting there mourning what you've lost. I talked to women that, it's been 3 years and I just don't know what to do. I'm like, 3 years? You need to move past this, because what we don't realize, there's a whole other life. The subtitle of the book is Mom is Not Your Only Name. What's your mom and? What's that and? There's something else God has created you for. You're on this planet for a reason.
Right.
There's probably another 40 or 50 years that you're here. Well, what are you going to do? What is your assignment to build the kingdom? So we have to figure that out. We cannot sit and mourn. We have to realize God has more for us. He has another name for you. So what is that name? Finding that out. What is it? Maybe there was a hobby you loved, or maybe you always thought, man, I want to start a small business, or I'm supposed to go into politics, or I want to go back to school. There's a million things, whatever that thing is. And some of you may not know. I didn't know. I was not a writer. I didn't do any of the things I'm doing now till God pretty much dared me to pick up a pen and start writing. And that changed everything and really got me pushed out into my own life, and my daughter's able to see that and see that Mom's doing her own thing. I'm not sitting here. Well, and of course she's quite a bit older, so I'm not in that very beginning stage, which is difficult.
Yeah.
It is. So know that it is. But especially if you still have kids at home, start thinking now, what can you do? Where do you think the Lord's leading you? What is that thing that you feel like, gosh, I really want to explore that? Start doing it now.
Right.
Your kids are going to be gone in a couple of years, but that's a couple of years to
Right.
really work on that thing. There's a million things on YouTube. If there's something, an area, get on YouTube, start learning, start doing something to get you further ahead. Because you may think, I only have an hour a day. Well, an hour a day at the end of the year puts you a whole lot further toward your goal than doing nothing or thinking, well, I'll just wait till they're gone. For some moms, they may be so busy. They may have a handicapped child. There's a million reasons why maybe they can't do that. But for your listeners who can, who've still got kids, like you have a 13-year-old and a 17-year-old. Yeah. So you're almost at the point where they're all gone, but you're already doing something. You're podcasting, you're doing other things. You're in your next thing. Mm-hmm. And some moms are, fortunate enough to be there, but a lot of us just get there and don't know what to do. So think about it. What was that hobby you loved? That whatever it is that you might have wanted to do way back years ago, that you had to set it aside to raise your children. Now's the time to plunge in and pray. Ask the Lord, what is that? Am I supposed to go back to school? I have a gal who wrote a little testimony in my book. Her son went away. She went back to school to become a nurse. She graduated from nursing school when he graduated from college, which I thought was really cool. because she went back and did that thing that she just knew she was supposed to do. So, I think we don't realize that we really are here to change the world. We're not here to take up space. God has a plan. He had a plan for me before the foundation of the world. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know for 29 years what it was and missed it for all that time, but I know now. And we all have to think about that. What am I here for? If you think about the time in history that he saved us for, I look at that as an honor. As crazy as it is, the world from when I grew up in the 60s and 70s, everything has changed. But this is the end. We're in that last days. If that's 2 years or 20, I don't know. But we could sure feel things moving very fast, getting crazier by the day. But I have to look at what's my part in building the kingdom in that. Each of us has a part. It can be something big. It can be something small. It doesn't really matter. Are you going to obey? Really? Because you can choose. I say this in my second book. You can choose to be chosen to change the world, or you can choose to say no. And I don't want any of your listeners to say no. We have to, and it's a little scary.
Yeah.
If you're jumping into a new thing. I started writing a book. I was like, I have no clue what I'm doing. But God always will bring those people around you. If you're in his will, he's going to provide who you need and what you need. So don't be afraid. You will be, but that's okay. Step out anyway. He's with you.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of us get to that stage and we realize I have put a lot of energy into parenting. Maybe I've ignored my marriage, or maybe I'm no longer married, or I'm at this place where it's like it feels empty. And so when you're describing, let's see what's next from this very hope filled perspective, it does change how we show up. So, can you
Mhm.
speak to how, when we are infused in these ways, how does that change our ability to detach from our kids and let them be who they need to be?
Well, it's when you're fulfilled with doing something that helps you detach. That helps you not be so focused on them all the time. And you mentioned marriage. That's a real important one to be pressing into now before the kids go, because he was there before they were there. He'll be there after. And there's a phenomenon called gray divorce. I don't know if you've heard of that, but
Mm.
it's parents get divorced after the kids go. It's
Oh,
much too common. The kids are gone. That was the thing that held them together, but it also became a buffer between them to where they could be honest with each other and discuss things. They didn't go on dates. I don't have time. I'm too tired. You have to do some things now to keep your marriage strong.
definitely.
And it's easy to use the kids as an excuse. And all those maybe little things, issues that you dealt with in your marriage, or things that were never resolved when the kids are gone, those are going to pop up.
Right.
So now's the time, because you don't start saving from retirement when you retire. You don't wait till then. You start years ahead. So same thing with your marriage. I have a whole chapter on date night ideas, stuff like that, but it's so much easier to do than we think, but we have to make time to do it. Don't lose your marriage. And if you're a single mom, it's a whole different story, but you too can get out and start doing things and not be so connected to those kids that you're in depression when they leave. Because that's not uncommon. Because you're a single mom, it's doubly empty. There's no husband to come home to. And that's a harder, you're already dealing with a lot, and then have that on top of it. But you too have more freedom. You too have a second act. And the second act is always the best part of the play.
That's right.
Right?
It is. It is. It's the reason you stay there, because that's where everything
Exactly.
comes together. The
Yeah.
first act is all crazy and there's all this tension and drama. And this is the part where it all comes together and you see it,
Yep.
why it's there. You understand the
Exactly.
story so much more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, just in closing, like, do you feel like this stage has found you to be just much more settled in your skin, more confident, because you have been able to walk through that first act and you've seen God, you've seen his presence? So, how has that helped you show up in a healthier way in the second half?
I think just being able to step into what it was with God when I didn't know where it was going, to
Yeah.
have that courage to step out. I think in America, we are so stuck in our comfort zone. We're so stuck in comfort. It's pretty easy for the majority of us to live in America and have a nice life and not really do anything
Yeah.
to make a difference. But having that courage to say yes to God, and that's hard. For anything he's calling you to do, it's probably going to be a little scary. That's how I know that it's God when I don't want to do it. Like my first book, I was like, no, God, I'm not a writer. I don't want to.
Yeah.
But because I obeyed, he brought me into a whole new season. So I feel very settled. I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing unless God changes it, and that's fine. He's done I like to say he's taken us on 90-degree turns many times during
Mm.
our lives. So,
Yeah.
but this is one I like. But if he changes direction, says you're supposed to, that's fine. Obedience is the key. It really is the key to stepping out. That's what's going to make your life satisfying, even if it's hard, because we don't know what he's calling us to. Some of us, he's going to call to really hard things.
Yeah.
But are you willing to lay down your life? I mean, that gets a little heavy, but that's scriptural.
That's
Are we willing to take that risk regardless of what it is and fully trust? So that would be my main message is don't be afraid. Get out there and do that thing he's calling you to do. Because if you do it, you will change the world.
Mm. Kate, thank you so much for what you've shared today with us. Tell us where we can find out more about your book and all the
Yeah.
great things that you're up to in this second half.
Absolutely. My book is called The After Party of the Empty Nest. Mom is not your only name because it is an after party. It can be. It will become that.
Yeah.
My website is katebattistelli.com. They can get the book at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all those places. And on social media, you can find me just Kate Battistelli everywhere. I'm the same for all of those. So yeah,
Hey,
definitely.
awesome.
Reach
Thank
out.
you so much
Yeah.
for these words of wisdom. I feel like it's happening less and less where we are getting those pearls from people who have been there, who are willing to talk about some of their journey. So it's awesome to hear that you are taking this wisdom the way we're told to do, of infusing into the people coming up underneath us to get that
Amen.
encouragement. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Alicia. This is great.
Yes, thank you. I think one of the best strategies in going through this season is to be aware that there will be several triggers that are going to come as we interact with our kids, and to not be surprised by them and to see them for what they are, to not let them completely derail us in our hope, in our ability to feel like, did I do this right? Am I a good mom? How do I show up? We really need to be able to see them for what they are and to not be shocked by them. So, for example, I feel like there may be some choices that your son or daughter might make in terms of where they live or their career or lack of career, or somebody that they're dating, somebody that they marry. They may make choices about drugs or alcohol that are contrary to what you grew up teaching them. They may walk away from church altogether. And when we can start to sense and see some of these things happening in our kids' lives, if that happens to happen, it's not everybody's story, but if it does, we can begin to see that there might be some landmines that the enemy might try to set up. Joyce Meyer, I heard her say once that the devil sets you up to set you up. So if we know that there are some situations that a child is walking through that we don't agree with, we need to first, as Kate advised, we need to pray. We need to be praying for us to have that child come in alignment with what the truth is and whatever that looks like, whether it is following Jesus more closely or finding a truth to straighten out the path that they're on. And we need to watch our own thoughts inside about when we see this happening. We need to expect that there may be these other trigger points that the enemy might try to put in there to make us feel guilt, to make us feel like doubting the confidence we have as a parent or as a mom. And so when that happens, we're not so surprised by it. And when it does happen, or if it does happen, we can say, here's how I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to use a model like the ADD model that I teach in my book, Emotional Confidence. We're going to start by acknowledging it. Just going to admit it, just going to see it, why it's there. It's real, it's plausible. I'm going to let God give me his compassion and empathy for why I'm upset. Why is it plausible that I'm upset right now? Let's talk about that. Let's see it. And then moving to the discern step. All right, so this is what's going on. This is how I'm feeling. What is true and what is not true? What have I allowed to let just kind of spiral out of control because I've said, okay, well, I see my child making this decision. And, I think that means that this is going to happen. And then this is going to happen. Like we can let fear completely derail us and send us down this whole path. Or we can say,
all right, this is happening. So that means this about me. We can begin to personalize it in ways that it was never meant to be personalized. So discerning it's true that this XYZ, but it's not true that this. And then making that decision to move forward, really leaning into, after we received his compassion in the acknowledge step, received his clarity in the discern step, but really leaning into that decide step to say, Lord, I know that there's only so much I can do as a mom, right? We talked about that in the episode with Kate, that we lose some of our power. We lose some of our ability to directly influence our kids, but we can focus on what is the power that I have here? What is the thing that I can control? Well, we can control how we react to it. We can control how it affects our view of ourselves. We can control how we are praying or not praying, how we're interceding for this child. We can control if we're showing up loving and caring and exhibiting the fruits of the Spirit that Christ wants us to share to maybe woo this child in a different way. Those are things that we can control. We can also surrender anything that might need to be surrendered. We can choose to pick up other activities and things that maybe we've seen. This idea of needing to be in control of every part of my child's life has become so much a part of my identity that, God, I see you calling me now. And this is another example, this is another example of that. So I see you calling me through this situation to open up my horizons, like Kate was talking about, trying some other new things and seeing, how do you want to use me beyond just my name is mom? What are some other names and other avenues that you want to use me in this season? So I pray that if you're in this season of feeling like I need to be able to detach myself from some of the decisions my kids are making because I'm now in this empty nest stage, just know that you're not alone, that you have a lot more control than you think, but it's very, very helpful to own what you're feeling and to discern what the truth is in that and let God lead you through it. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this episode, because if you're walking through this, I'm sure this kind of awakened some situations, or maybe you have a certain child in mind as you're thinking about this. I would love to have a conversation with you about this. It's really simple. You would simply go to aliciamichelle.com/conversation and just let me know, hey, this is the topic that really resonated with me. Let me know a little bit about where you're at. And I promise that I will reach out to you personally, whether that's on an email, maybe we'll reach out on social, but I want to connect with you and I want to talk to you further about what you're feeling and what were some of the things that came up for you as we were talking about this. What are some of the frustrations that you're feeling and where do you want to go? What do you want to feel differently in this situation? So reach out to me again, aliciamichelle.com/conversation. And you'll see that there is a form there for you to fill out a little bit more about you, about where you're at, some of the things that you want to talk with me about, and we'll go from there. So I look forward to hearing from you. All right. Take great care, friend. I look forward to seeing you back here next week as we continue this topic in May of all of these issues and emotions related to motherhood. Take care, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining me today for the Christian Mindset Coach. If you loved today's show, would you take 2 seconds and share a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts? I've got a special gift for you when you share a review, my amazing 50 I Am declarations, 50 statements and Bible verses about who you are in Christ. This is an audio meditation and a written statement that is extremely popular with my clients, and I want to give you access just for sharing your Apple Podcast review. Simply screenshot your review and send it to hello@vibrantchristianliving.com, and we'll send you the link to access the 50 I Am Declarations resource. Thanks so much for sharing your rating and review so that we can get the word out about the podcast. See you back here next week.